Well, first tonight to the outrageous move by Chinese officials to body block Australian journalist Cheng Lei at a press conference on Australian soil. We're still waiting for the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister to properly condemn this unacceptable act. Here in Australia, we fiercely protect our freedom of the press, unlike in China, where journalists are locked up or regularly disappear. The visiting Chinese premier and his henchmen apparently don't respect our laws or our values, despite them claiming Australia is their new BFF, panda diplomacy and all of that. Well, journalist Cheng Lei was imprisoned in Beijing for 3 years. She missed out on crucial time with her children she'll never get back. It was deeply traumatic for her.
12 hours a day of pure sitting and very little chance to get up and just walk, just pace around the very little room. They say that they gave me 15 minutes of fresh air, but all it meant was there's a window up the top that the guard would open for 15 minutes, but the curtains are still drawn and you never saw anything except the blue curtains and the mottled carpet and the beige padded walls. Silence.
And that was Cheng Lei in October 2023 after her eventual release. Now, she was working as a television host in China when she was wrongfully imprisoned. Now she's a journalist here on Sky News. And today she attended the press briefing in Canberra with Anthony Albanese and the Chinese premier. She was aggressively body blocked by Chinese officials. Have a look. I mean, you can see that manhandling there by the Chinese official of an Australian consular diplomatic staff member. And you also saw there Cheng Lei taking a photograph of the officials. Now, clearly, an Australian official asking the Chinese embassy staff to move is important, and yet they refused. That in itself is shocking. Cheng Lei also tried to move seats. She swapped with another Australian journalist, but the Chinese officials followed and once again blocked her view. She spoke about what happened to her on Sky News earlier.
Well, it's typical, right, with these events, especially if they're attaching importance to the friendly facade that they're, carefully staging, that voices of discord or, the presence of someone who's a bit controversial not harm that. And in fact, at the, the briefing by Prime Minister Albanese and Premier Li Qiang, that's a Freudian slip, just now really highlighted that, because they went to great lengths to block me from the cameras and to flank me. And I'm only guessing that it's to prevent me from saying something or doing something that they think would be a bad look. But that in itself was a bad look.
This can't be glossed over, and it's emblematic of how China treats its journalists and its critics. I saw firsthand when I was writing my book and investigating the origins of COVID, how whistleblowers who tried to raise the alarm about the new pandemic went missing, never to be seen again, even doctors. Some bravely risked their life to give me information over encrypted platforms because the topic was that important to them. But the shamelessness of these Chinese officials trying to flex their muscles And the fact that they felt emboldened to act like that in front of our Prime Minister, in front of the full press gallery and in front of the cameras, well, that tells you everything about the nature of the current Chinese regime. This is a serious diplomatic incident. Australian officials were involved. They asked the Chinese officials to move, yet hours later, the Prime Minister claimed he still knew nothing about it.
There's some of the documents were being signed in the committee room today.
Yes.
Some Chinese embassy officials tried to block my colleague here, Cheng Lei, from view of cameras. Is it acceptable to import that kind of behaviour into the heart of Australia's democracy here in Parliament House?
Well, I didn't see that. I saw Cheng Lei and we smiled at each other during the event. Look, I'm not aware of those issues. It's important that people be allowed to participate fully, and that's what should happen in this building or anywhere else in Australia.
That is a very weak answer from the Prime Minister. Now, Shadow Trade Minister Simon Birmingham didn't quite believe that answer from the PM either, because it is unbelievable that no one would have told him about it. And Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Paterson also said that Albanese's version of events lacked credibility.
I would have thought, Tom, it would be surprising if the PM's advisers didn't say, by the way, Prime Minister, you might get asked a question about this. And I suspect he should have been prepared, and even if he didn't quite see it taking place, should have known fully that it was happening. But
it's not credible, Tom. It's been publicly reported earlier this year that the Prime Minister employs 11 media advisers in his office, and among them are people who might be surprised to some of your audience, but watch Sky News. And standard operating procedure for a media adviser is to brief your principal on recent breaking events before they go out and do a press conference. It is completely not credible. The Prime Minister did not know when he walked into the press conference that this incident happened.
And James Paterson's view is that this is now a pattern of behaviour from Albanese, where he has repeatedly and comprehensively failed to call out Chinese aggression, including and especially when it involves our military, who are putting their lives on the line to protect our country. And James Paterson will be on my show tonight to speak about this. But just for a moment, think about the courage it would have taken for Cheng Lei to even be in that room in the first place, in the presence of Chinese officials who locked her up for 3 years. She never knew if she was going to see her children again or sunlight again. You can only imagine the emotional trauma of walking into that room, the courage to sit there, the memories it would inevitably dredge up. But she would know or trust that she's now in Australia. She's safe. No one can touch her. And yet, henchmen for the PRC tried to exercise their own totalitarian values right here in Australia, in Parliament House. And the question now is, will Albanese strongly condemn this? Will Penny Wong? How can Chinese officials feel so emboldened to act like this while they're visiting Australia? Perhaps it's because they believe they've already bought our silence. Albanese will not call out China's foreign interference, its espionage, its extensive malicious cyber attacks, or its human rights abuses in public. He will not ask how the COVID pandemic started, despite many Australians still suffering from long COVID or vaccine injuries. He won't mention the Muslim Uyghurs in labour camps in Xinjiang. You wonder if he only cares about the plight of Muslims when it's to do with Israel. We're seeing from Labor this dysfunctional moral compass where Albanese feels a compulsion to condemn in the strongest possible terms our ally Israel, while staying silent on the greatest aggressor in our region, China. This is despite the fact Israel is a democracy defending its people from terrorists in a war that is as much about the existential threat of the Jewish homeland as it is about protecting the values that underpin our Western civilization. And China, is part of the emerging axis of evil, along with Russia, Iran and North Korea. But Albanese appears to ignore the reality of these threats. They just don't suit him politically or ideologically.